You are watching the Deadfoot Diver Podcast with Kurt, the Deadfoot Diver.
Welcome to the Deadfoot Diver Podcast. My name's Kurt. I'm the Deadfoot Diver. And on this podcast, we're going to discuss everything diving, technical diving, and most importantly, diving with disabilities and the benefits of diving with disabilities. So on today's podcast, on my initial podcast, I am thrilled to have with me a legendary diver in the world who has been on more wrecks than you can imagine. He has done all kinds of diving on the Andrea Doria. He's been on Titanic expeditions. He's dove the Lusitania and many, many more, including Oak Island. Being Canadian, I had to mention that. So without further ado, welcome John Chatterton to the show. How's it going, John?
It's going great. Thank you so much for having me. And you know, you and I were talking, prior to this about special needs divers with disabilities, and there's not really that much on the way of the podcast media that addresses their diving. And I think what you're doing is great. If I look at the heart of diving, it's about challenge. It doesn't matter whether you dive in a shipwreck or a cave or anything. If you're not just swimming around, if you really are trying to excel as a diver, it's about challenge. And of course, with adaptive divers, special needs divers, they have to overcome the challenges of whatever their special needs are. So really, diving is a very natural thing, I think, for special needs divers. It's what diving is really all about.
So you're an instructor. In your time during an instructor, what types of benefits have you seen people get from disabled diving when they've been disabled?
Well, I'll give you a good example. When I first went to commercial dive school in like 1982, they told me I was too old.
How old were you? Oh yeah, no, absolutely. It's one thing is when you're in the water, it's a total equalizer as far as pain goes, movement, and mobility. You can do a lot more stuff that you can in the water. And like when I'm in the water, I don't feel disabled. When I'm on land, I'm clumsy. Case in point. My hand's busted up right now because I tripped on a dark path.
Yeah.
But
see, I have to say that's partly your fault because you live in Canada, and for about 10 months out of the year, it's like covered in ice. So it's like in Florida, you trip over a coconut or something like that, but it's very rare. It's far more rare. So I have to say, it's your environment.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, the environment this time is actually in Jamaica. So, first night of my trip and no alcohol involved. Even I'd only been off the plane about 4 hours.
How was your trip to Jamaica?
It was amazing. That was actually the first time that I have dove in the ocean in since around 1993, I think was about the last time I'd done any ocean diving. So it was phenomenal. We actually went to Couples Swept Away, amazing resort, or Couples Tower Isle. Amazing resort, amazing staff, really good with me with my disabilities, because not easy to get in and on the little boats that they have to get out there. So they'd like take my tank out for me and stuff like that. Amazing bunch of guys. My one disappointment with it was lack of sharks.
Well, the environment, the underwater environment, is incredibly dynamic. And when I first moved to Fort Lauderdale, I don't know, 15 years ago, something like that, you couldn't go diving without seeing a shark. I mean, pretty much every single dive. If you saw 5 or 6 sharks, that was not unusual at all. And the environment kind of changed, and it got to the point where you were hardly ever seeing sharks, but now you were seeing barracuda. They were getting barracuda. They were starting to inhabit all the wrecks. That the barracuda weren't around because there were so many sharks, and so the dynamics of the ecosystem keep changing. But I wouldn't doubt that at some point this becomes a shark-rich environment again.
Well, hopefully that is the case. Actually, tomorrow I'm going to be actually interviewing a world famous shark expert from Nova Scotia, Dr. Dr. Neil, who's fantastic. I'm actually going to go do a cage dive with him this summer
Oh,
on the podcast.
cool.
Yeah, which is going to be really fun. And I'm actually going to get to dive with sharks in the Bahamas in April.
Oh, you gonna dive with the tiger sharks or?
Yeah, my wife actually, for a surprise, actually booked me a trip on Blackbeards the other day. It's my first ever liveaboard trip, so I'm totally pumped about doing that.
Awesome.
So, so when you've had what type of things do you see that when you've got an adaptive diver that they've had to adjust to on their gear and stuff like that? Because every single diver that's adaptive is going to have a different setup completely.
Yeah. Um, yeah. And I can't make any broad generalization beyond. You have to look at each individual diver. There's a huge difference between a diver who's lost his left arm and a diver who's lost his right arm. I mean, just as naturally, the responsibilities of the wing on the left hand shoulder. Okay, well, now you got to cross over, but like, okay, well, how do you maintain, wherever, if you're on an anchor line in a current, then you have to, how do you adjust your buoyancy where you can't anchor yourself with one arm and vent the wing with the other. So, every single case you have to look at. And if you've got one special needs instructor working with a diver, he might come up with solutions that are completely, totally different from what another instructor might come up with, or that the diver may learn to do things one way, but as time evolves and he gets more and more dive time, and he's like, oh, you know what, I do it a little bit different, and this seems to work a lot better. But that's part of the enjoyment of diving, is that it has a creative side, every dive is like a work of art. First of all, every dive. This is for my wreck diving career. Every dive's a training dive. It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity for you to try out, learn what's working, what's not working, what works better. So there's no real excuse for you to not be able to make the most of any dive.
Yep.
When my girlfriend was learning to dive, she was like, "Oh, I'm doing this, shallow water dive. I'm sure you wouldn't want to go." Blah blah. I was like, "No, I'll go." And she's like, "Well, what are you going to do?" I said, I will make the most. It's an opportunity to train. It's an opportunity to try this, that, the other thing. There's no reason in the world why you can't find something that you can work on, a skill you can hone, something that you say, well, I really wouldn't want to try this in 300 feet of water. Let me see if it works in 33 feet of water. Yep. So, the only thing in common with all the adaptive divers that I've worked with is they're all unique. They're all different, and they have different motivations. There's different goals that they have, and it's what they want to do, and trying to figure out how the best way for them to make that happen.
Yep. No,
there was a guy by the name of Matt Johnson who had Duchenne's muscular dystrophy, and he was like, I want to be a scuba diver. I want to dive in the ocean. Yeah. And he's literally on a ventilator. Wow. And he just, and living in Minnesota. So it's like, it took him years of effort. Number one, he also had to finance everything. So,
it's not a cheap sport.
No, it's not a cheap sport. But the thing is, his support requirements were huge. And then it's like, okay, how do you make all of this happen? He's a guy with a tracheotomy. He's on a ventilator. So it's like, now how do you translate all of that? And along the way, there's like, all kinds of mistakes. It's like, okay, well, we got it. If you're going to put him in a suit, you can't put him in a wetsuit because he's got a trach tube. Well, you might be able to do it that way, but how do you do it that way? You can't just take him as he is and throw him in water. So they put him in a dry suit, and then it's the dry suit. They made custom ports for they made a single port in the suit to connect to his breathing tube. But the thing is, then they found that they by having a single connection for the in and out, they ended up adding anatomical dead space. So he has the sensation of being suffocated because he's getting so much. He's rebreathing such a much larger volume of gas. So it's like, it was genuinely groundbreaking. Every single aspect of it, you had to look at it, you had to troubleshoot it, and you had to make it work. and it took years, and it's my role was very small, but he got a lot of different support team members, and by the time we got him down to the Florida Keys, he's in the water with turtles and sharks and all that, with his ventilator topside, uh, um, delivering gas to him at depth.
That's amazing, just to be able to do that, and the amount of stuff involved just to get one person in the water is
Well,
incredible.
but the thing is, sometimes, if you take a kid, a child, and the child makes some kind of adult accomplishment, the first, the youngest person to ever dive Titanic. But typically speaking, they're being carried by like a parent. They're their support is really a cradle of support. In Matt's case, he really had to make everything happen. He had to find the people, get the gear, raise the money. So his goal of diving was really, it was really much, much more of him overcoming challenge after challenge after challenge after challenge. And that's what diving is about. For his, relatively speaking, shallow dives, he was more of a diver than the average guy,
Which is
because
incredible.
yeah, no, and so that's what I say when I say, that's the heart of diving. The heart of diving is like, I wanna I want to excel, and along the way there's going to be a bunch of challenges.
Yeah.
I got to have the right education. I got to have the right equipment. I got to have the right experience. I gotta bring all this stuff together. And for the more involved challenges, you're not going to do it in a day. You're not going to do it in a week. You're working at it over years. And that's I've been diving shipwrecks for decades, and I still get in the water every single dive, and I'm enjoying it. I've got things to do. I am very much mission driven. Whether I'm working with students or I'm trying to develop my own skills and redesign equipment, or it doesn't matter. I get in the water, I got a mission, and I think that um, if I can still have some kind of mission every time I get in the water, why can't everybody else?
Yeah. Oh, exactly.
I was the guy who was too old for commercial diving. So.
That's funny, especially considering I bet those guys are looking back and going, oh.
Well, the truth of the matter is, I signed up for a class. I did it on the GI Bill. I did it with the federal government paid for my school. I was in a class with 6 students. It was in the winter. Class started in like the I think the 1st of December or the 3rd of December or something like that. In the port of Camden, right across from Philadelphia. And it's like, it's cold. They had to break through the ice some days. Just it had all iced over, and I was like, what an idiot! I could have come here in the summertime. It's like, but there was 6 students in the class, and you start your education, but one of the first things they do is, at that time, they gave you an oxygen tolerance test, an
Oh,
O2
yeah.
tolerance test. And the thing is, you had to pass the O2 tolerance test. Now, they don't do it anymore because they found that it's not really reflective of your ability. But the theory at the time was, if you can't handle high pressure oxygen, high partial pressures of oxygen, then diving's not for you. It's like you couldn't do it. So we had this, of the 6 students, one guy is doing the oxygen tolerance test, and he convulses and has a oxygen seizure, and he was okay. But they went, oh, okay, you failed the oxygen tolerance test. You can't be a diver, and they sent him home. But so that left 5 of us, and I wasn't the best student. Maybe I wasn't even number 2, but it was like, a year later, after we graduated, a year later, I was the only guy working in the business.
The only one.
And it's like, so the other guys in the class had maybe given it a try or something like that, and it wasn't for them, for whatever reason. But it's like, I was genuinely motivated to be successful because I was told I couldn't be successful. My first helmeted dive was in the old U.S. Navy Mark V rig with, big breastplate and helmet. It's your kit, your weight belt was like 75 pounds. You had about 200 pounds of gear on. You got the big bronze boots. And it's like the first dive, it's one thing, they try and get you into it. You're in a classroom and they get you all suited up and you gotta walk so many steps and that kind of thing. But I get in the water. You can't see anything. There was no visibility. It's the Port of Camden, and it's like, you get in the water. It is cold. It is. You can't see anything, and it's like I'm thinking to myself. I'm like, oh my, I'm not going to make it. I can't. I'm not going. I'm not. I don't. I'm not giving up. But this is probably. I think this is probably the end. Wait a minute. 1 foot's touching. 1 foot touched the bottom. 1 foot touched. Wait a second. Wait, the other foot's on the bottom. Maybe I can do this. And literally, the dive started out with me thinking, I'm not gonna be able to survive this. And by the end of the dive, of like, I'm like, this is for me. I can do this. And that is, the feeling of overcoming obstacles. Whether in that case the obstacle was me, it was an intimidating environment. The old Mark V's for a novice diver trying to, it sounds easy. They put a bucket on your head and they pump that air down with a hose. It sounds like it's easy, but there's a lot more in the way of subtleties to have a successful dive. And if you're a working diver, If you're trying to get something done, and it doesn't matter whether you're an instructor working with students, or you're doing underwater construction, or you're doing survey work, it doesn't matter what the job is. You can't be focusing, obsessing on the diving part. The diving part has to like just almost happen in the background to allow you to do the work that you're supposed to be doing. So it's like the level of your diving has to be extraordinarily high, and it's like so that you can accomplish, you know, whatever it is.
Yep.
And
No,
and I think that's that level of challenge appeals to a lot of people, and I think certainly in the case of adaptive divers, it's like, they give me a chance, I can do this.
yep. I'm that's one of the things I love about diving again is the fact it gives me a challenge. I mean, especially with my disabilities when I started this year, there's no adaptive instructors around here at all. We have one really good one in Canada that lives about 6 hours away, and he's so overbooked he can't even take any students. Um, and it's I had very little options, and when I had done my refresher, it was actually down in Cozumel, and so I was in like nothing basically, BC and
Yeah, no,
BC, and that's it. I come back up here and I'm like, all right, I used to do this all the time. No big deal. I got this. Go buy a dry suit, go do all that stuff, right? Get ready. And let me tell you, about the first 4 or 5 dives were not really dives. They were more of a test trying to figure out my gear so that I could get sorted out under the water.
what, but you know that it's that's not a bad dive. It's like somebody's got to sort the gear out, and nobody else is going to do it. So I guess it's up to you. And,
It was
and I can't tell you how many times I've gotten in the water and learned a lot in a very short amount of time because of failure. When uh, um, I dove with a bunch of Brits. John Yerga and myself dove with a bunch of Brits and 2 other Americans on Lusitania in 1994, and we made a bunch of successful dives. I think we averaged over 100 for the group. We made over 100 dives over a
wow.
couple of weeks, and you know, we we started out like not. It was the beginning of technical diving, and it was the first technical diving expedition to Lusitania. But we wanted to do something else, so we're like, okay, well, where do we go now? Let's go to Britannic. Britannic's like, Lusitania's 300 foot, Britannic's 400 foot. Let's go to Britannic. Okay, we'll go next summer. Well, as much as much as we might have wanted to go the next summer, it was a lot more involved than that, especially when it came to permitting and stuff. So we had a meeting with the guy who owned Britannic. He owned it. He had actually purchased from another guy. It's the British system of maritime law. The insurance company that paid off on Britannic then owned the wreck. they sold the wreck to somebody else who then sold it to this guy. And this guy was kind of like full of it. But he was, we're sitting down and we're saying, okay, well, this is what we want to do, and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, okay. And he's like, well, I was talking to Dr. Ballard, and Dr. Ballard said that within the interior of the shipwreck, it's entirely possible that there are anaerobic areas that have been sealed off, and because of the lack of oxygen, they're perfectly preserved since the day the ship sank. And first of all, I'm like, okay, yeah, there's no oxygen in that H2O, hydrogen, oxygen, and there's no oxygen. No, I'm afraid that's not. I'm not. I've heard other. As a commercial diver, I've dealt with scientific stuff like this, anaerobic environments, and it's like, yeah, no, that's not the case here at all. But the guy's saying, he says, so as a result, the divers' bubbles on the inside of the wreck might disturb these areas of anaerobic preservation. So you guys can't go inside the wreck because of your bubbles. So I was like, okay. What about me? And the guy's like, what do you mean, what about you? I said, I dive a rebreather. I don't make bubbles. He said, what's a rebreather? I said, a rebreather is a diving apparatus that takes the diver's exhaled gases, recycles them through a closed circuit. A solenoid adds minute amounts of oxygen to replace the oxygen that the diver metabolizes, and then it runs through a scrubber where it removes the CO2. So it's a continuous circuit. There's no bubbles. There's no exhaust. The exhaust is recycled within the rebreather. So he thinks for a moment. He says, okay, we'll amend the permit. The only one allowed inside the wreck is John Chatterton. And so I'm like, okay. So I leave the meeting and I'm like, holy crap, I got to go get a rebreather now.
You didn't even have a rebreather.
I didn't even have a rebreather. So and it was at a time, I literally, rebreathers were not available to John Q. Public. Everybody who was diving a rebreather was basically building it. So I ended up going to Washington State, and I found a guy that had like 5 rebreathers, and they were all in various states of, being constructed. But I got out there, and he's over a weekend, 2 days. And I made 2 dives. All total, I probably had about maybe 11 minutes of bottom time. But because I had a catastrophic loop failure on the first dive. And it's like, okay, we'll try and get it. Come back to second dive, and I had the same problem. So it's like, okay. So we get out of the water after the second dive, and the guy's like, well, I don't know what to tell you. And I said, I'll figure it out. And I basically just took all the pieces and parts and, packed it in a suitcase, went back home, cleared off my kitchen table, and rebuilt the rebreather. and this is like spring, and I'm in. I got a few months, and then I'm on Britannic, so it's like I did my first ocean dive after I rebuilt the thing was 230 feet of water.
On your first dive with it.
First dive with it, because that's where the boat was going. I was crew on a boat. I was like, well, I got to see if this thing works. So I was so scared, I never let go of the anchor line. I went down. My 230-foot dive was hold on to the anchor line, and then basically coming back up the anchor line. That was it. So, but it's like, the failure. I had probably 40 catastrophic failure dives on that rebreather before I went to Britannic.
40.
So the thing is, I was not a very accomplished rebreather dive. In other words, I had very little experience with a working rebreather, but I was really good at bailing out, because every dive, stuff was going wrong. Stuff had to be addressed, and so sometimes you think when you want to get in the water and you want everything to go according to plan. That's what we all strive for. But if we have a problem, you don't always know what it is that you're going to learn on the dive. And it's like, catastrophic loop failure. It's a learning opportunity. It's kind of like, it's like eating at the cafeteria where you're in the line and, they put the food on your plate. It's like, okay, that's what I got. So, we want to plan and get into the details of the dive and visualize how it's going to go and all that kind of stuff. And we want to do our very best. But sometimes things just don't go that way. So when they don't go that way, it's a wonderful opportunity to educate yourself and say, okay, well, you know what, this didn't work. This was the problem, or I don't know what the problem is. Okay, well, if I don't know what the problem is, what could it be? What are the potential candidates? What are the top 5 things that it could possibly be? Okay, let's try and isolate one or isolate the other and go from there. So it is, you can get something out of every single dive. You don't necessarily know what that's going to be when the dive starts.
When you're diving, so back then you wouldn't have even had any like formal rebreather training back then, would you? That like
No,
literally, how did you learn?
I mean, I was already a relatively accomplished deep air wreck diver. I mean, we were diving the Andrea Doria. I probably, at that point, I had I'd say I had probably 100 air dives on the Doria, maybe another 20 or 30 gas dives on the Doria. But the rebreathers were like the new thing. So I was an already experienced diver, but it is, we relied on the diver community as opposed to the certification agencies. There were certification agencies, and a lot of the guys that I was diving with were, like scuba instructors or something, but a lot of them weren't. So, I mean, I was teaching open water scuba through NASDS, but doing deep air dives on the Andrea Doria, and we were playing around with things like nitrox and helium without any education whatsoever. I took a class. It wasn't even a class. It was like a lecture from Billy Deans. Billy Deans came up to New Jersey from Florida, and he's like, "This is what we're doing with mixed gas." And there was no certification agency. There was no certification. There was none of that. And but it was I mean, it was like those guys were way ahead of what we were doing at the time in New Jersey. And I think it was like a year later he came back to New Jersey to do some diving, and he was like, "Oh, you guys really got this wired now." He's like, "We're starting a certification agency, IAND. There was no technical diving. It was IANTD, but they added the T for technical later, and they had two certifications, nitrox and trimix, and Billy basically certified us, John Jurgen and myself, you know, brand new certification agency and all that, and we'd already been diving this stuff for.
So what's
Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to the Deadfoot Diver. Subscribe and share. Your support means the world to me. If you'd like to contribute directly, you can do so at the link in the description at buymeacoffee.com/deadfootdiver. Every donation helps me work towards earning my adaptive dive buddy certification, travel costs to help me assist other adaptive divers, and covering further training and equipment costs, bringing you on even more exciting adventures. Don't forget to check out my guest links in the description. And remember, grab an adventure and live, and don't ever let a disability keep you down.
what's your cert number? Or is it low, like in the low,
It's
like under 100?
50. I think I'm 58, and John Jurga is 57, or could be 59 and 58. John Jurga's got one number lower than me, and he's never let me forget it ever. He's like, I was certified before you. But so I was already an accomplished diver. I was already doing a lot of wreck dives. This new diving apparatus, but rebreathers were also, killing guys. When every guy's like building his own unit, you had to be careful. But it's a year after that, I talked to Martin Parker at AP Valves, the inspiration, one of the first, rebreathers for the public, and he was like, we got 5 units, and we're going to build another 5 units, and I was like, great, I'll take one. He's like, no, forget it. You live in America, like everybody sues everybody there. He's like, besides, he said they're already spoken for, and the guys who were making, there was a company who was making Mark 15 military rebreathers, but the problem was they were going under. They were, they would take an order, but their suppliers were like people that I knew, and they're like, now those guys, they're not paying their bills. That's like, whatever you do, don't give them money. If you can hand the money and take the stuff, okay, maybe that'll work. But the Mark 15 was a military style, and what we wanted as civilian wreck divers was completely different. And we wanted deep diving rebreathers, And the Mark 50 military goals are military goals. Commercial diving is commercial diving goals, not even military goals. Military goals. So recreational wreck divers, what we wanted to do was different, and so it is. There's no experience that you can have diving.
Oh yeah, absolutely. When it comes to now, that brings me to another question. Like back when you and I first started diving back in the 90s, when I was just getting out of diving, I was actually starting to get into doing some technical stuff. There was no training back then at all.
No.
Basically, unless you went down to Florida and got trained by like Shaq Exley or something like that, right? Like
Well,
one of
yeah,
my friends.
but it's also Tom Mount and Shek Exley and the Cave guys. They were doing some amazing stuff, and but they were also trying to do exploration, and they weren't trying to really teach anybody. I mean, they were maybe doing some teaching on the side to make some money, but their heart and soul was into the exploration. So, I mean, today, I mean, we are much safer as divers today. I mean, the equipment's better, the procedures are better. You've got a much better support network. Training is better. Everything's better. But I mean, there was a time where diving, the diving technology had kind of gotten ahead of our ability to utilize the technology. So guys were getting hurt. There were diving fatalities, not because the technology failed them. And I can't think, other than medical issues. And when I say medical issues, I mean like guy jumps in the water and has a heart attack. Other than medical issues, I can't think of a single diving accident where it's not the diver's fault.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, he ran out of air. What would he do that for? Well, I mean, we plan for every eventuality. So the thing is, it's up to you. Don't dive beyond your limitations. And the cave diving guys are real good about, but because cave diving is linear. It's like, follow the line in, follow the line out. It's much easier to that is far more organized than wreck diving, where okay, you jump in the water and where are you going to go? Okay, well, I'm going to the chapel, or I'm going to the galley, or I'm going to the wheelhouse, or okay, and how are you going to get there? And there, where are you going to go? So, almost anywhere in wreck diving, we're not necessarily following the route in is more likely than not going to be it's more likely that the way out is not going to be just retracing that back to the starting point. We do circuits as opposed to linear in and out, and it's a different discipline. Wreck diving, cave diving, ice diving, mine diving, all overhead environment, all similar. Yet when you really when where the rubber hits the road, They're different, and it's like those subtle differences are quite often only profound at the extreme end of the sport. So it's like, a guy can say, I can say, oh, I'm a really good wreck diver. You know what? I think I'm going to go mine diving. What the fuck? I don't know anything about mine diving. That certainly is not that's one of those that's just probably not going to end well. Just because you're still alive does not mean you were right.
Yeah.
So it's like, guys do stuff and then they go, hey, I'm still alive. I must be right. And it's like, no, actually, I don't think so. You're just lucky.
You just got lucky.
Well, the thing is, you can't dive with luck. When I went to Oak Island, they tracked me down. They called me up and they said, listen, first of all, we've about had it with divers. Because we've had like, I forget what it was, 3 or 4 or whatever guys. We've had 3 or 4 different guys. They've been in this thing and they can't seem to get any results. They can't get us. And I'm like, okay, give me the specifics. What's the deal? And they explained it to me. And they're like, okay, well, we've got this thing, and there is a shaft, there is a drill string in the hole. It is cored down into this chamber, and it's like 200. I forget what it was. It's 220 feet or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. What's the problem? It's like, oh, they can't get down. And I said, well, send me some of the, they had, what do you have for video? And they said, oh, well, we've used a drop camera and we've videotaped the divers, and it's like you got a guy who gets down there and he's like, oh, I can't get into the opening. It's like, dude, they told you it was 27 inches. It's not like, God, that 27 inches is really tight. It's like, no, it's 27 inches. You were either going to be able to fit into something 27 inches, but the thing is, it's not 27 inches, because then down around, I don't know, 180 feet or something like that, they drilled. You've got the shaft, but then they drilled from the outside. A drill string came in, a 6-inch pipe came in, and then went in. So it's kind of somewhere in there. There's a 6-inch string of pipes. So it's like, oh, well, it's not 27 inches. It's 21 inches with the 6 inches of pipe. Now, if the 6-inch pipe goes right across in the middle, that means you've got 6 inches in the middle, and you got 10.5 inches on either side. So if you can't fit into 27 inches, clearly you are living in a fantasy land. I mean, the 27 inches has to be, boy, this is pretty roomy. And it was like, can you move the pipe? Oh, nobody knows, because nobody got down that far. So the thing is, it's like, if you're planning, if you just say, you know what, I could do that. Without crunching the numbers first. It's like, no, you're not going to be successful. I mean, you have to be able to visualize your success, and it shouldn't involve like a white stallion or like Excalibur held high above your head. It's like, how are you going to do the nuts and bolts part? How are you going to do the down and dirty part? So it's like, okay, well, I'm like, you know what? If I got a helmet on my head, 10.5 inches, if I can't move the pipe, I probably am not going to be able to make 10.5 inches happen. I can squeeze my body by, but I can't. I'm not going to. But I don't know that I'm not going to. The pipe's not going to have some motion. It may. They couldn't tell whether it just went across and drilled the other side, or it was hanging down, or whatever. But the thing is that, so there's some stuff that you can't go to the unknown with a plan that is so precise, because you don't know. It is the unknown by definition. So it's like, the stuff that you do know, it's like you got to really like kind of work that out. I was diving in the water, and my friend Howard was working topside, because I did that Oak Island dive on hard hat, and the guys were talking to Howard, because they'd say things, like when I was there, I was like the field goal kicker. Like, nobody wanted to talk to me. They were afraid they were going to mess up my feng shui. Like, don't he's the diver, leave him alone. It's like, but they'd go to Howard, and they go, do you think that he's gonna get in down there? And Howard's like, he's already been in down there. They're like, what? I said, he's already been in down there, probably a couple thousand times, in his mind. We're working. What if this happened? What if that happens? How about, is this a problem? Is that a problem? So the thing is, by the time you get down there, you're not saying, oh, if only I brought a spoon and a waffle iron, everything would have been okay. So you have to get there and say, if you're going to need a spoon and a waffle iron, then that's what you got with you.
Yeah.
Okay, let me get the waffle iron. So and he would, what Howard said was the obvious fact that, like, no, that's exactly what happens. When you're making a dive, you're kind of visualizing it in your head and how it's going to go. And the thing is, if you have not planned the dive correctly, then you're going to know early on when if it starts to fall apart, and then you're like, okay, I got to be grown up. I got to call the dive, and I'll come back. I'll come back later, or tomorrow,
yep.
or whatever. But that, I mean, that's that. It's not. You can't get by just with heart. I mean, heart drives everything, but you have to have the ability to. You can't dive beyond the limitations of your ability to plan. And it's like, so every single dive, you have an opportunity to learn a little bit more. You get a little. Your planning is going to be a little bit better. You have a little bit more recall of personal experiences that can help you, not necessarily for every dive, but for those dives where things are kind of unusual.
So what was it like being inside the chamber once you got in there? I have to ask that.
Um, the thing is, I mean, I've been commercial diving, you know, uh, uh, 40 years. I guess at that time it was pretty close to that, something like that, 30 something years. I can't tell you how many times people hire you to do things, and they're like, tell me the truth, tell me what's happening there, and when you tell them stuff they don't want to hear, they're like, this diver sucks. It's like we got la 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 la. You know what the problem is? The problem isn't that we're wrong. The problem is we got to get another guy because this guy. So for me, I mean, any kind of working dive. I mean, I literally had a checklist of things to do once I got down there, and so I'm working with Howard. Howard's like, okay, the first thing we're going to do is the whipping post or the tunnel coming in or the treasure chest on top of the pile. So I literally was just working off a to-do list, and you can't take, if you're trying to be effective on a deeper dive with and you got a lot more to do than you got time to do it. It's not the time for doing high fives. It's not the time for going, I would like to take a moment to just feel the experience. It's like, no, shut up, get to work. I'm not paying you to feel the experience. I'm paying you for information. So, but I have to say, even though it was the unknown, even though it was like, oh, we've never been there before, it was pretty much exactly what I expected from the data. In other words, they had sonar, they had a lot of information on what was down there that they could pass on to me, and those guys. The guys at Oak Island are the coolest guys. They are awesome guys.
I'm hoping to get to meet them this summer, actually, when I'm out there.
Well, I'll tell you, the Rick and Marty are super guys. They are the best guys to work with. But it's like, I literally got down there. I was confident about everything I told them. It wasn't what they wanted to hear. Yep. And that part I don't have control over. And I feel bad for them because, they wanted to hear, it's like, oh, here's the treasure chest and here's the manacles from the whipping post, and it's like, but the thing is, I have enough experience as a diver that I could plan. I wasn't just saying I couldn't find a whipping post.
Yeah.
I could say, this is what your whipping post is. The whipping post that you see on your sonar, it's one string, and then there's a PVC water pipe that somehow ended up falling into the hole. But the thing is, because of their distance, they appear to be the same diameter because you're looking at the 1-inch pipe up close and the 4-inch pipe further away. So it's like, I think for everything, all of the things that they wanted to know about, we supplied them with the answer. But it's like, I felt early on that it was a naturally occurring cavity. And when I actually found the sink where stuff is kind of filtering down into the sink, because I'm like, down there rooting around and stuff, and I could see how this cavity could have been. It's not a mystery how it got created. Somewhere down below that, even deeper in the aquifer, it's stuff is gravel and stuff is funneling out. But it was an awesome experience. I read a book on Oak Island when I was a kid. I was a kid, which was a long time ago, and the book I read smelled like an old book back then. So it's like, this is something. This is something. It's like I knew about Oak Island. I had an interest in Oak Island, and then I had the opportunity to go there, and ply my trade, and it's like, it's like, gosh, what's better than that?
Which is amazing. Yeah, I mean, I followed Oak Island since I remember when I was a kid, reading the Reader's Digest article that came out. So it's been amazing, and the stuff that they're pulling up there every single episode, I'm like, okay, when's the next episode coming out? Right? I don't want to wait a week.
Well, the thing is that TV has made a real difference because the real treasure of Oak Island is what you see every week, every episode, every show. You got these two brothers, markedly different. The family like came together and sent Marty off to college. And Rick was the one who, he stayed home and made things work for the family. Rick sacrificed, Marty excelled, and now they're in a position where they get to work together on something, and that's the treasure of Oak Island. I mean, whatever they find, whatever they bring up, for them, there's not going to be anything better than that. And I think that's why people like the show. They like the show because it's a very positive vibration. Why is it a very positive vibration? Well, because there's no fakery, there's no bullshit. They love each other. And the thing is,
sorry,
that when Rick and Marty, their family keeps getting bigger and bigger, and they love doing what they're doing, and TV allows them to do that.
Yeah. No, it's amazing. Actually, I actually have kind of a distant tie to Oak Island, and that is that my wife actually is a distant relative somehow of Dan Blankenship.
Oh,
which just blows my mind.
Yeah.
She actually happened to be at his last birthday party. They happened to go to Oak Island when he was having his birthday party there, and she actually got to meet him, which is really cool. So
yeah. Well, I'll tell you, there's I mean, Oak Island is just an absolutely fascinating place, historically speaking. You start talking about the Romans and the Knights Templar and all this stuff. It is some fascinating history. For me, having worked down in the Dominican Republic, it also, somehow, some way, William Phipps who found the wreck of the Concepcion and became the governor of Massachusetts, went to Oak Island,
Yep.
in the late 1600s. What did he go there for? You know, don't know.
So what about one thing? I know that we've run a bit long here, but I have to ask, out of all the stuff that you've done, I gotta talk a couple of minutes about the Andrea Doria.
Okay.
Because the Andrea Doria, when I got out of diving, that was actually my goal, was to dive the Andrea Doria. I actually had called up Steve Belinda one day. I can still remember the conversation I had with her. That conversation will never leave my memory.
I still, with the internet being what it is, it's like, I still, hear from Steve Belinda all the time. But if we, uh, uh, um, if we, the sad reality of shipwrecks are shipwrecks are born and they age the same way people do. And at some point, the Andrea Doria is just going to be kind of a brown stain on the sand, and then even that's going to go away. That's life. For me, for Steve Belinda, we were kind of, we were in our prime at the same time the Andrea Doria was in her prime, and I think it's just one of those things. You couldn't have planned it that way, but it just worked out that way. So I think I was incredibly fortunate. Last time I was on the Andrea Doria was right before COVID. I haven't been there since COVID. The summer prior to that, I was there, and it's like the wreck to me seemed much smaller.
Really?
When we were diving it on air, it seemed giant. It's like going back to like the third grade and looking at the little desk. This desk was much bigger when I was here before. Uh, um, but it is, the Andrea Doria was the place where it would give you as much rope as you wanted to hang yourself, and that was the problem, and that not everybody understood that, and I think that when we were diving the wreck on air, we had virtually no fatalities. But then the wreck started seeing a lot of traffic, and much more of it was on helium. And so it's like, oh, helium is we were much, our progress was a lot slower on air because we realized how dangerous that environment was. And I think some of that got lost in the transition to helium and trimix divers, and we as a community, divers figured that out after a while. But there were quite a few fatalities.
So do you think a lot of that is also based on guys trying to dive that record like just way too soon before they were prepared for it?
Absolutely. Well, you had guys who ended up being fatalities that were really, they were good divers, but the thing is, they didn't have the same kind of experience. There was one guy who literally went from he was diving, diving a set of doubles, twin K valves, no manifold. So he's diving a cylinder, and he's swapping the regulators, in the however he was doing it during the dive. So I breathed some on this tank, I breathed some on this tank. For the Andrea Doria, and I can't tell you how many times this caused a problem, in that I'm going for the big dive. I gotta change everything. It's like, and again, it's like what I was saying about there being every dive is a training opportunity. You don't train one way and then say, oh, I'm going on the big dive. I'm going to change everything because it's the big dive.
Yeah.
But he added a third bottle, a pony bottle. So now he's got 3 regulators. He gets down there. He's not real experienced with dealing with narcosis. He breathes down one tank empty and switches over to the pony bottle, thinking he switched over to the other tank. And then the guy runs out of gas on the pony bottle. So there's several problems there. It's like, number one, if how much gas do you think you're using? If that's the case, obviously it seemed to us that he was using more than he expected to use. But the thing is, when he breathes the one and he breathes the other, so here's the guy who ends up drowning on the rack, and he's still got a full cylinder of gas on his back. So that is it is not having the experience in that Andrea Doria type environment. In that, we made enough dives, and of course the Andrea Doria wasn't the only deep wreck we were diving, but if we had enough dives on the Andrea Doria to figure out what worked and what didn't work relative to narcosis. So it's like, we understood our limitations better from deep air diving, because we knew what we could do to mitigate the situation, to give us a little bit more of an advantage. And to be specific, we found that the dives where we used less gas, we had less narcosis. Well, so why are we using less gas? Well, if you're cold, you use more gas. If you're scared, you use more gas. Or if you're working hard, you use more gas.
Yep.
Okay, don't get cold, don't get scared, and don't work hard.
Yep.
If you do that, you are. It's not that nitrogen narcosis isn't a thing, and we didn't understand the science. Now, of course, we understand the science much better. CO2 plays a significant role, but we had the time. We took the time. We had the opportunity to what works and what doesn't work. I went to set the hook with Richie Kohler one time on the Doria, and I had my video camera, and I'm like, dude, if you can manage the hook without me, I'm just going to shoot video. If you need me, I'm there for you. He's like, okay. Well, we weren't we went down the grapple and we weren't where we wanted to be. So we wanted to move the line. So basically, Richie's like, I got it. He's humping the chain and I'm kind of shooting video of him humping the chain. So the current's kind of pulling us along. And, we get to the place where we want to be, and he takes the chain and he wraps it around and he makes it all right, hooks everything up, like, done. And I'm shooting video of him. And he's like, undoes the whole thing and then does it again. So we get back on the boat and I'm like, well, that was good. That was, we're right where we want to be. Good job. Like, I was like, what was that thing where you tied it off and then you undid everything and you retied it again? He's like, what are you talking about? I was like, where you tied off and then, put the shackle on and then you untied everything and then you tied it again. And he's like, I didn't do that. I said, yeah, you did. And he's like, no, I didn't. I was like, yes, you did. And I have it on video. And he's watching the video and he's like, I got no recollection of this. And it's like, oh, okay. Well, so we learned. We learned to minimize our physical exertion if we wanted to minimize narcosis. And anything that eats up your gas is going to have anxiety is the same thing. I scared myself, or being cold. Anything where you use more of your gas supply. I mean, you're breathing more molecules of nitrogen. So.
Yep.
But
what about what?
We don't. It is the subjectivity that we don't fully get as divers without experience.
Yep.
Things that are subjective become clearer with the more experience that you have.
So what out of all the stuff that you've salvaged off the Andrea Doria, because you've pulled up a fairly large amount of all over the years, what would you say is the coolest thing that you've brought up off the Doria?
I would say I got a couple of there were in the first class lounge there was a scene of medieval life as told on these ceramic tiles. And I think I don't remember exactly now, but I think it's like 11 or 12 tiles. One set on the port side, one set on the starboard side of the first class lounge. And so, when with the photographs of the Andrea Doria first class lounge, you can see these tiles done by the Italian ceramics artist Romano Rui.
Yep.
And I think I brought up a couple. Other divers brought up some. There were guys that brought up maybe one or what. But I had two complete ones, but I also had some pieces and parts. And I had, as near as I could tell, it looked like I was missing 3 pieces. But I had, so I had most of it, but I was missing 3 pieces. I had a couple of other pieces that weren't the 3 pieces from this panel, but they were a small part of another panel. And I got together with a guy who was on Steve Belinda's boat at the time. And he was in the same situation I was. He had an almost complete panel and was missing 3 pieces. And he and I changed pieces. and he completed hhis panel, and I completed my panel. And
Wow.
I always thought that was, I mean, that was pretty cool, in that it was just like kismet. And the panels themselves, I actually sold the intact ones, but I kept the one that I assembled. And yeah, but I always thought that was really pretty darn cool.
That is it. That is amazing. Yeah, definitely. So, is there any bits of advice that you can give anybody that wants to go dive the Andrew Doria in the state that it's in now?
Sure. And it's not just the Andrea Doria. It's like, get prepared. If you want to dive the Andrea Doria, you can't start preparing with less than a year.
Yeah.
In other words, you have to research the wreck. You have to research the diving history on the wreck. You have to your diving has to be such that it's whether that you understand how those dives are made operationally, and your thermal protection is all dialed in, and it you need everything clicking, because you can't. I've seen guys say, "Oh yeah, no, I'm ready to do this," and then they're not. Why? Oh, because their wife wants to divorce them, or their kids in jail, or you know life happens around them,
Yeah.
and it's like, no, you're not going to be successful in the Andrea Doria if you're letting all these distractions, if you have a bunch of distractions. I've seen guys actually come to the boat, and they're assembling their tanks on the boat.
On the boat.
Yeah. Well, I had to fly in, and I was gonna, it's like, okay, we should have flown in a
Day
day
before,
before, flown in the
a
week
couple of
before,
days before.
yeah. The thing where, oh yeah, I'm just gonna go there and kind of, snap my fingers and make it happen. You can't change anything for the big dive, and I don't care whether it's Andrea Doria or whatever it is. I mean, you can change stuff, but change it, dive it, troubleshoot it, become comfortable with it, and then go to the big dive.
Yeah.
You can't say, "Oh, I'm doing the big dive. You know what? I'm smart enough to know I got to change this way I've been diving it. This is all wrong. I am really good at diving it wrong." And it's like, no, and I think most guys actually know that. I think they just don't want to admit it.
Yeah.
So
I find that when I add a new piece of gear just because of my adaptiveness, I tell everybody, yeah, give me at least 3 dives to get comfortable with it, because I'm dealing with an extra piece of gear and I'm blind in one eye.
well, the thing is, it's like, I mean, that, but at the same time, you can't prepare for the Andrea Doria if you're not diving the gear you're going to dive the Andrea Doria with, and
Yeah.
you can't prepare to dive the Andrea Doria off of New York by diving in Florida.
Yeah.
You can't, and I mean, it's like, it's like, okay, get out of bed, pull on your big boy pants, and say, if I'm going to dive the Andrea Doria, then I have to do this stuff. If I don't do these things that I know I should do, then I shouldn't dive it.
Yeah.
And guys, guys don't want to say that. Guys are like, well, I would have rather done this knowing what the hell I'm doing. But, oh, I'm feeling lucky. And it's like,
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
I know that since I've gotten older, because I turned 55 this year, I
Oh my
like doing
God.
risky.
Do I have to speak louder?
I know, 55. Uh, but you know, I find that as I get older, I still enjoy challenges and risks, but since my body's a little bit more banged up, I like to stack the odds in my favor.
No. Which, when you're talking about something like the Andrea Doria, it's like we all know there's been a bunch of fatalities on the Andrea Doria, but the thing
Yep.
is, there's also been a slew of close calls.
Oh yeah.
So, it's you don't want to be a close call. You don't
Yep.
want to be a fatality. And it's like, Andrea Doria is not the place to learn how to dive.
Yeah. Completely agree.
There was a time diving the Andrea Doria where the coroner in Suffolk County there knew my name. How embarrassing is that? Where the guys come, hey, John, Danny, hey, how you guys doing? How do you think we're doing? Does anybody ever see you show up and go like, oh, good, the coroner's here? No.
Yeah, that's not good when the coroner knows you by first name
No.
like that.
No. It's like, dude, did you get our shirts yet? Across the back. No, and it's like, it's dark humor and it makes us laugh, but the thing is, it's not funny. There's nothing positive. There's nothing fun about a dive accident, and I don't care if it's somebody getting bent or it's a fatality. It impacts the community. It impacts your family, and you have an obligation if you're going to do serious diving, Andrea Doria or Britannic or anything. If you're going to be a decompression diver, you have to take responsibility at a level where you say, I'm going to protect my family by doing this well.
Yeah.
And I'm going to put in the time, I'm going to put in the effort, and I'm going to put in the money to not just do this, but to do this with minimal risk, with a level of risk that is so low it's acceptable. Diving is inherently dangerous. You can't say nothing is ever going to happen. If you have a heart attack underwater, if you faint underwater,
yeah,
we had a girl on the Seeker faints at the ladder at the back of the boat. What the hell? What happened? Oh, I'm hypoglycemic. Well, okay, maybe we should do this differently then. You can't. There's certain things that you can't just say, I'm feeling kind of lucky. No, we can't. We welcome good luck. There's good luck and bad luck. We welcome good luck. We welcome good fortune. But we prepared for bad luck because stuff happens. I've got thousands and thousands and thousands of dives. And somebody said about me, they said, if it can go wrong, it's probably happened to John twice. And it's just, if the odds are 1 in 1,000, okay, is it going to be your 1,000th dive or your first dive where it happens? Because everything's on the bell curve. So you cannot especially in the underwater environment. It doesn't matter if you're on wrecks or you're on caves or where you are, but certainly the more extreme disciplines, the environment does not tolerate foolishness. I mean, we can have fun and be silly and all that, but when it's time to jump in the water, it's got to be like all business.
Yeah.
And if you're scared, there's probably a reason. I mean, we're all, you're doing something in the water and you say, hey, like, I hope this works out good. But the warm blanket that it makes you feel cozy is the fact that you've put in the time and the energy to figure this out. And you visualize, what you're going to do. You've got a rock solid dive plan that you feel good about. And if you don't have that, I got faith in Jesus. Well, you may be seeing him sooner than you planned. So it's not the way. It's not the way anybody should be diving.
Yeah. No, exactly. And unfortunately, a lot of guys don't take it seriously when they are suiting up or planning it.
Well, you know what? Which is fine. Diving is awesome recreation.
Yep.
But you shouldn't take that recreational mindset that still requires a minimal amount of into a cave, into a shipwreck, into a deep dive. It's if you want to dive deeper, if you want to penetrate wrecks, if you want to go into caves, if you want to experience the overhead environment, it takes more, and you have to be willing. You have to be willing to give more.
Yeah.
To be ready.
So, I understand that you got some courses coming up in the new year because you do a lot of still active teaching.
I haven't taught a class in a couple of years. I've been on a contract overseas doing survey and salvage stuff. That's over. So I'm going to be coming back to. I'm going to be teaching advanced rec. I'm going to be teaching deco procedures, and I'm going to be teaching deep air. And in Pompano Beach, right, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, there's
cool.
It's a great teaching environment. It's an awesome, fun destination, but the shipwrecks. There are specific shipwrecks in that area that, they've got a lot of artificial reef wrecks, but there's also a shipwreck that is a bona fide shipwreck that sank, and it's a great training wreck. Cool. So, and it's relatively close to shore, so when the worst thing is when you're traveling someplace to try and get training, you don't want to have the weather knock you out of the box. So but I have to have a mission, and I love teaching, and I've been teaching. I've been teaching since 1985. I became an assistant instructor, and doing technical training is that's for me. It's the most fun.
Well, I definitely plan on having you on my cert card on one of my cert cards.
Oh,
Either
fair,
deep air.
fair, fair enough. But the thing is, I want to see a doctor's note on that thumb.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, well, you've seen the picture of it when it was out of the cast. It should be interesting to see the outcome of it when it
Oh,
actually felt better all week in Jamaica diving.
see. Yeah, but you got to go. You got to go to a real doctor. Don't go to one of those guys that's like working out of the trunk of his car. Get a real guy.
Okay, do you know how hard it is to get a doctor appointment in Canada?
Uh,
Our medical system is not that great.
well, we have the same system here, but it's just more expensive.
Well, true. However, if you got insurance, at least you can get in to see somebody quick instead of it being like months and months and months.
Listen, for you and I, we shouldn't plan on actually going in to see the doctor. We should plan on not going in to see the doctor.
True.
When we
So,
fail at that, it's like, oh damn, now I gotta go see the doctor.
so how do people get a hold of you if they want to book courses with you? What's the best way to get in touch with
The
you?
best way to get is johnchatterton.com or decompressiondiver.com, deepairdiver.com, and just shoot me an email. I'm on John Chatterton on Facebook. You can
Yep.
find me. I'm easy to find on Facebook. I got I got two different profiles, both John Chatterton. One's that I got a I'm not sure what they call it, but it's like a fan page or something like that. But I
Oh
can't
yeah.
I can't I can't use messaging.
Yeah.
So I've got a real page that I think you and I were
Yeah,
talking
you're
about.
not hard to find because
No,
I found you in a couple minutes on it.
I'm not hard to find. I'm not in witness protection yet.
Actually, it's funny because most of the day, actually, it's not. This is the first time you and I have been talking or chatting that it hasn't been storming and all the times
Yeah.
that we've been. First time we were talking, you were in a hurricane.
Well, yeah, and I mean, we were trying last week. We tried to do this, and it was there was, in the third world, internet, electricity are intermittent. So,
Yeah. So all good though.
well, listen,
So thank you.
you and I finally made it happen. So,
Finally, and I'm hoping I'm definitely want to come down and do some diving with you for sure. That
cool.
would be amazing. So and my wife is all for that as well. So she's like, yeah, okay, if you're getting trained by him or your adaptive instructor, you can do anything you want.
Oh, she'll probably regret those words, but okay.
Yeah, except I'm lucky that way because she totally supports me in the diving bit. Like she's totally 1,000,000% behind me doing all this stuff. And she actually wants to see me dive with you.
Well,
So
thank. Is, are you heavily insured? I'm teasing. It would be my pleasure. We'll get a chance to go diving, and it'll be fun for both of us.
yeah, it'll be amazing. I can't wait. So thank you for joining the Deadfoot Diver podcast, John. I look forward to having some really cool guests on again and next week. And remember to like, subscribe on my channel, and you can also donate down there to me as well so that I can get some more great content up here and keep on doing this and getting some on-site stuff done. So thank you and have a great day, everybody.